So without further ado, let's introduce our guest this week. His name's Richard Rushfield, longtime journalist, editor, media entrepreneur. He's worked for every media company under the sun, from the LA Times to Gawker to Yahoo, and of course, and I might even have a few questions about his experience at those. I think in 2016 or 2017, you launched The Ankler as like a solo newsletter.
Yeah,
Right?
2016, and then I was by myself until the beginning of 2021.
Yeah. So you started out on MailChimp and kind of cobbled together a couple different tools, and then you moved over to Substack. We're going to talk about that a little bit. And then recently, within the last year or two, you decided to basically become a media mogul yourself and team up with an a very well-respected editor at The Hollywood Reporter. You went out and raised money, and now you have a full-fledged media operation. And so we're going to kind of talk about the differences between what you were doing then and what you're doing now. And that's what I want to kind of start with. Like, you went from being a solo creator to basically expanding into a full-fledged media company. And I think a lot of people think of the solo creator life as being the dream, where they have all this personal freedom, they're their own boss. But now you've gone to being someone else's boss, and you're answering to investors. Like, what motivated you to expand to something beyond yourself?
Yeah, well, so I had started doing this. I work in the entertainment industry coverage space, and I started doing it because I thought there was that coverage of the industry had become very generic and predictable and not very insightful. And I was doing it by myself for 5 years, which is it's a wonderful thing, but you're also doing it by yourself. And after 5 years of it, I was starting to think about what are other challenges, what are other just yourself writing a column 2-3 times a week. 500 columns in, you start to look for, like, what's the next hill to climb here. And Janice Min, who you alluded to, was a sort of legendary editor of this in this world, had been following me and said, you've established this unique voice, and you built up this audience. Do you think we could build on it and make it, a full service or publication, or a larger publication where there's room for other voices and other people doing things? And I was, I felt the trade world was covering remained kind of stale and generic. So I could see how there was more room to charge in there than just what I had done. And I was interested in the idea of creating, I have certain skills and I have certain weaknesses. I don't break news or things like that. I don't do that, the kind of like hard. I'm a sort of feature writer and an analyst and commentator, but I'm not like a hard news reporter. And adding people that could do those other sorts of things that I didn't do, and expand the coverage seemed like there was a real opening for it, an opportunity. So
Yeah.
we teamed up.
Yeah, I mean, and you're kind of speaking to something I wrote about recently in my newsletter, where you're seeing more and more of this in the creator economy, of like creators kind of recognizing their strengths and weaknesses and teaming up with, partnering with other media operators and creators to both expand their audiences, but then also do things that maybe one person wasn't very good at. Something I've been thinking about a lot, especially considering that I'm trying to move more into like selling ads and stuff like that, and I just have no sales experience, or even really frankly any interest in doing those sales. So like, I've been thinking about, how do I recruit someone who maybe like a partner who could do that. And so like, and then there's also this kind of loneliness factor of like wanting someone to collaborate with. Like, do you feel more fulfilled on that front, like, to have someone to run ideas by or get excited about things? Like, is that part of it as well?
Yeah, I mean, Janice is a legendary editor and has a great instinct and all that. I mean, I was never totally alone, because I always, every piece I wrote, I always had an editor read. I had like volunteer editors or friends, or so I had other people involved. But to be doing it as part of a bigger group, and now we have, I think now there's 7 of us at this point. So it's have other people to talk to about it is really interesting. And what you say, it's the when you start out, you kind of say, I'll do everything. I can handle it all myself, and I'm and I'll be the best at everything. And knowing your strengths and weaknesses and knowing what you like to do and what you want to do. Like, I think if you want to bring value to your company when you're doing what you enjoy doing and what you're good at, you'll be bringing the most value. And when you're bogged down in the things that if you are willing to admit to yourself that you don't particularly like, and that you're probably as a result not that great at those things, your time brings less value to the company than it would if you were focusing on your strengths. So that's a big thing.
Yeah, so we'll get into more talking about like what those new strengths that you're bringing into the company. But in the meantime, so you've worked, like I said, you've worked for a lot of different outlets. Several of them have gone under, like Gawker, like BuzzFeed News.
BuzzFeed News is gone. The division of Yahoo I worked for is pretty. I actually went through recently after BuzzFeed News shut down, and I went through the many jobs I've had over the past sort of decade and a half, and not a single one of the jobs that I have still exists.
Wow.
Anywhere. In many of the cases, the company is gone. At the very least, the division is probably gone of the company. So
yeah. So like so that leads to my question then, like, what's different about the Ankler? Why do you think your model is more sustainable in the long term than like the business models of some of these other publications that went under?
Well, it starts with what I loved about newsletters is that, when you're working at certainly at giant companies like Yahoo or even the LA Times where I worked, but also even at like Gawker or anything, like there's so many other priorities there, and corporate priorities, and toes you're stepping on. You're thinking about 100 things. You're thinking about how does this fit into the greater coverage, or how does this fit into ad deal. You've got meetings, and you've got everything else that just it ends up being such a tiny sliver of your life that's like focused on how do I create the best thing for the readers? Like what would my readers like to see, and what's the best and what's the best thing I can create for that, and like really trying to think about what do I have interesting to say about this. And when you're at a newsletter, it's like the intimacy of that direct relationship, because there's no corporation between you and the reader that you see. Do they subscribe? Do they come on? You're going direct to their email box. It just means you're really putting the reader in the center, and really quickly if you've lost that link with your reader, if you've gone down a rabbit hole that is not interesting to anyone but yourself, or you're phoning it in. There's one thing about newsletters in particular that is a huge difference from working anywhere else. It's that you've got it if you're working at a news organization, people are so used to doing little things that really aren't meant to be read. They're like, you do a little favor, you write a little article, stick to the back, or it's just an announcement. You've got to check this box. You got to. It's all sorts of things that just end up being. You develop the mentality like this is just going in some corner of a website, and if it doesn't stop the world, who cares? Because it's it's not on the homepage, right? But when you're in a newsletter, it's like everything is center stage. Everything you're in the spotlight, main event, prime time on everything. So if you're boring or wasted, in my first couple of years doing it, I talked to pretty much every reader I had and asked them the question over and over: how often do you think I should publish? What's the right publishing schedule? I got one very consistent remark, and I write to a professional audience like, which is you should publish as often as you have something interesting to say, and not one syllable more. Like, don't waste my, when you have something interesting to say, just send it out, give it to us, but don't waste our time if you don't have anything interesting to say.
Yeah. So if I understand correctly, you're kind of fitting with theme that I write about in my newsletter, that kind of like the media ventures that will succeed are the ones that stay lean and incredibly focused, whether it's local news or industry news or like some kind of niche like that, where it's like the anti-BuzzFeed, the anti-Vice, where you're just pumping out content to pump out content and get page views. Like you're incredibly strategic about delivering just pure value to your most loyal subscribers. Is that basically right?
Yeah, and I guess I think of it as a conversation with them. So, you don't want to monopolize the conversation. You don't want to filibuster. And you don't want to just deluge that you're at a dinner table. You don't just want to deluge the people with everything that comes into your head. You want to, but you want to be engaged and interesting. So
Yeah.
that's always. And that's what I just think makes this so, if you can stay true to that, why what you build will be so much more durable than anything you do at a big media company.
Dr. Ellington, you have a question?
Yes, Richard, if you were starting from scratch today as a solo creator media company, what would you do differently today in 2023 than in 2016?
And to set some context, you launched in like 2016, 2017, before the current Substack era, when what you were doing was still a novelty. And now in 2023, obviously everybody is trying out this model, so it's a lot more crowded. So yeah, in that context of,
and that's the big thing. I mean, I had so much of the space to myself. I'm not sure. I don't think that if I launched the same way I did, and I really just sort of walked backwards into it, because no one, it doesn't seem that long ago, but really it was before Substack. I launched before Substack did. And it was just like, nobody sort of knew what a paid newsletter is, and nobody thought they would succeed. So I launched without a clear vision of what I was going to do and who it was for, and sort of flailed around and stumbled around for a long time before I found the voice and everything. I think now when you launch, you can't. I think you just have to have a much clearer, sharper focus than I did of what you're doing, who it's for, and I think the two questions, like, know who your audience is and know how you're going to reach them. Don't just say, okay, I'll publish this. I'm writing this for left-handed people who live in this zip code, and I'll just publish it and hopefully they'll find it. You really have to sort of make splashes there, and and have a sense of how that's going to get to the people that you want to reach.
So like maybe like almost drawing up a business plan that really kind of has like a tight outline of like, this is what I'm going to produce. This is my audience. This is the format of my newsletter, like things like that. So rather, I've spoken to you before. It seemed like you kind of, I think if I remember correctly, you didn't even send it out to a full list at first. It was just forwarded to your friends. And you kind of just started haphazardly like toying around and experimenting, versus today where you can actually see a lot of examples of things working for other people and kind of build your model, kind of framing it around what they're doing.
Yeah. And I think when I started, just the novelty that I was doing a newsletter talking about the entertainment industry, because there wasn't another one that existed, anything. So I think the novelty carried me a fairly long way, even while I didn't know what I was quite doing yet. And I think today I'd have to find my voice much, but I did. I mean, the useful thing I did that I would recommend everyone is, as someone says there, I started it when I started it, I just sent it to 5 fronts and I said, I'm just testing this out. Tell me what you think of it. And then I would add on a couple friends. I spent like a good 3 or 4 months, and but before where it was under 30 people. And it was just, you got to find what your voice is, what you really can write, what you're good at. You got to find the cadence, like how often am I really capable of putting this out, and just doing it kind of quietly like that for a while. It doesn't totally work out all the kinks. We still evolved a lot and continue to, but it helps you before you step onto the stage to have some sense of who you are and what you're doing.
Well, when you look back at that era of like 2016, 2017, and you're experimenting with their different stuff, what moved the needle in terms of like when you would see these huge rushes of new signups or paid subscribers? Like you've already said that you never really like broke news. What was it that you saw like was like really resonating with readers?
So when I started it within coverage of the entertainment industry, it was kind of the apex of the hype over Netflix, and people were the trades were pushing this Netflix miracle, and that talking about that Netflix would become all of entertainment. And at that point, Netflix was putting out very sort of half numbers and gave out very little information, and whatever they put out, the press just sort of swallowed it up. And everything, and I, when Disney first launched their announced that they were launching the service, Disney Plus, what would become Disney Plus, the overwhelming reaction was, well, they've come too late. It's ridiculous to start a service now because Netflix owns streaming services, so they should just license everything they have to Netflix. Is how far the boosterism went. And so I was the only one sort of poking at that boosterism, and like asking questions about their model and saying, how does this add up and everything. And I think for people who worked in the industry, there was so much there was so much sort of frustration that everybody was just giving this company a free pass and letting them get away with telling all kinds of stories that nobody else could get away with. And there was they put out that movie Bird Box, and everybody wrote the story that Bird Box is bigger than Avengers. The Avengers bigger. That was a headline that appeared on, and it caused so much frustration, so that every time I would write about Netflix, I would have a huge boost of subscribers. So I said in that first couple of years, I could have just changed the name to the Netflix Gazette, and I probably would have done better even. So it's just finding those stories that really resonate.
Well, did you feel like the success was that you had a contrarian view? So you were publishing something unique that was kind of outside the trade, what the trades were publishing?
I was saying something that people were like, finally, someone is saying it. Finally,
yeah.
We've been thinking this all the time, and no one would say it. So it hadn't been my intention even to write that kind of pieces when I started, but I tapped into something, and I listened to the audience. This is what they wanted to hear more on this topic. So,
and did you get the sense that like your newsletter was being like forwarded around the studios, like that it was like truly a kind of more traditional word of mouth, someone actually forwarding the email, like that kind of growth?
Yeah, I mean, very quickly I was getting calls from people who were wanting to talk to me, who were just at a level that I hadn't really operated or communicated before. And on Substack you can see who's reading your newsletters and how many times they're opening it. So kind of looking at them and like, oh wow, that person's reading it. That's it had been my thought when I started the thing that this would be something that like the assistants and the young writers would read, and then over time it would bubble up to the top. But and it ended up going the other way, in fact, which makes sense because assistants by and large don't have any money to spend to subscribe to do a newsletter. So
Yeah. Virgie asked, like, were you specifically trying to speak to the media industry, or did you see like media enthusiasts, a more general audience coming in? Was it very insidery to start with?
I mean, I started this with the idea, like, if I could build up to someday getting 5,000 subscribers, then I could make a life out of it. And I was thinking that at a much lower price point than right now. So it was the most likely place to search for those people would pay for an analysis of the entertainment industry was professionals who worked in it. So that's always been my target and who I've gone after. And I would guess now, not 95-98% of my readers are entertainment industry professionals.
Interesting. So you obviously, flashing forward a little bit, you decided to go after something bigger. What was your pitch to investors? Like, you didn't raise a ton of money, but you did raise a decent amount of money. Like, what was the kind of pitch for what you were trying to build that was bigger than just yourself?
Yeah. So after I teamed up with Janice, I mean, first of all, teaming up with Janice, her name carries a lot of weight in her reputation and skills. And so just the idea of joining forces told a lot of the story. But it was the idea that there was still a lot of room for within coverage of the entertainment industry, which is, big enough world that it supports 3 or 4 full publications with
All
staff.
owned by the same people.
Yes, exactly. And just that there's still a lot of room to do a lot more that gives meaningful coverage and it's and that the success that I had just as a one-man show showed the hunger for this perspective, that if you could do more from there, it would go well. Unfortunately, we started doing this and ramping up, and very quickly had a lot of success. That as we do more with more people, the numbers grew. So we could, by the time we went to investors a few months after Janice said to join me, and we already had a lot of success to show. So
yeah. So let's talk about that. That when you and I spoke several years ago, you were still a one-man band. I think you were maybe sending one newsletter a week. I think it was during the pandemic, so I think maybe you had a child at home or something like that, and that was kind of limiting your output. Now you're sending like several newsletters a day. You have several writers for you. What's kind of your approach on that front in terms of free versus paid content? Are you creating like segmented lists that people can subscribe to individual newsletters and not to the whole thing? How are you kind of, balancing your mix of different newsletters, both free and paid?
I mean, it's the free versus paid. It's always experimenting and
Yeah.
If your subscribers didn't notice, you'd send out everything for free to get it to bring in people. But at some point, doing that makes your subscribers feel like, the hell am I paying for here if you're giving it all away? I think Substack had a formula when it's just me that they tried to go for, is you do 3 a week, 1 for free and 2 for your paid subscribers, and make the one that's the broadest interest your free one. And that sounds like the right thing. Now, as we grow, we're very mindful of like our industry audience and our core readers, and we're looking for things that are real interest to them. It was the biggest change in the last year is we found this fellow Sean McNulty, who writes this morning roundup email that is a fantastic breezy overview of the day's news with commentary, and he's just really smart and insightful, and somehow manages to, in terms of my talk about strengths and weaknesses, one of my weaknesses is I can't write anything under 1,000 words, apparently. So I start to write a sentence, and I come out of it 1,000 words later, and he is able to put the day's news in real smart perspective in just like a couple sentences, in a way. So he joined us and we started sending out to subscribers this morning roundup email, which people have found really valuable and just adds a lot to the value of the subscription. As Hollywood's gone on strike, we started a spin-off newsletter called Strikegeist, about the Writers Guild strike, and we've made that completely free because it's the people on strike, a lot of them are struggling writers, and we want everyone in the community to be able to read this and see it, and it builds a list that as the strike fades, hopefully some of those people will become full-time, full paying subscribers. But
well, are you allowing subscribers to pick and choose which newsletters they subscribe to, or are they just getting the full flood? What are you noticing on, like, in terms of that kind of functionality?
So that's a real struggle, I'd say, because you have different categories that you put my column and other things in, and people can go into their preferences and decide which they want to get and which they don't. I subscribe to a lot of newsletters, and when I get that welcome email that explains to me how I set my preferences. The minute I hear the word "go to your profile," I close that email and I don't read another word of it. And educating people how to go set your preferences and do that is a real struggle. So we're trying to find, there's lots of people who want everything we write, and our open rate stays really consistent across it, but there's a lot of people that say, I just want the wake up, or I just want your stuff, or I just want this person's stuff. And so we're trying in a way that's find ways that are more seamless to let people customize their experience as they like.
When you're hiring, are you hiring based on the beat? Like, we want to be covering this area more, or is it more based on talent? Like, this guy's a really good writer and I'd love to have him writing for me. And so, like, what's your thinking on there? Like, are you trying to bring other creators, people with followings, or are you being more strategic, saying we want to cover this coverage area, so let's hire someone to do that?
We'd like to be strategic in that way, but I think in the end it does come down to talent, and it's really that thing about everything you do being on the main stage. Like, there's not a lot of people that can execute at that level and speak to that. So I'd say it's more like we have a wish list of a bunch of topics we'd like to cover and start to, and people could join us and do something, or we could do a spin-off newsletter and do something. And it's just, as you find a person that has the knowledge and the skills, and it takes a lot of gumption to be a newsletter writer. It is not a job you can phone in at all. You won't go very far with it, but so finding that mix of sort of skills and sort of writing talent and kind of entrepreneurial energy is they're rare people. We got a great, amazing group of writers who all live up to 4 or 5 of us that all live up to that, but there's not a million of them out there.
Are you doing anything in terms of, like, interesting in terms of incentives for your writers? Like, obviously one of the cool companies to watch right now is Puck, where they're distributing equity and also doing stuff where they reward people for the number of subscribers they bring in. Have you experimented with any of that, or you just have very more straightforward payments?
We are experimenting, and we're trying. I think with the people we find, I just say it's more about finding like what's the combination that's most meaningful to you. Like, would you like to have lower base pay and a bigger potential upside, or is your is your base pay all you care about, or equity? And it depends a lot where people are in life and what and what they want to get out of this. So we're still experimenting, but I'd say at this point it's about putting together packages that make the most sense for each individual.
So like when you raised a lot of money, my initial thought was, oh, they're going to probably move off of Substack to something a little bit more flexible that allows things for like segmented lists and more control over the website. You've decided to stay on Substack. Why? What attracts you to the platform to make it worth staying on?
I mean, first of all, my hats off to Hamish and Chris and George, the Substack founders, who have been, they recruited me to come on there when I was about 3 years in, and they've been very good to us, and it's a great platform. We've been very happy with. It's it's kind of pushing, but we're sort of inventing doing a bigger bigger publication via newsletter experience is there's not a template or a framework that you can just turn on for this anywhere, and we're sort of inventing how that looks. There's a few other places that are doing similar things, but not that many. There are some features that we'd love to see on Substack, like the things you mentioned, but there's also benefits of the Substack community effects are very real and drives a lot of our subscriber growth. So
yeah, so like are you seeing network effects from like the recommendations tool, from notes, different things like that?
Very much, yeah. That's very effective. So it's trade-offs, and Substack wasn't necessarily built for a kind of publication that we are, but nothing really was. So we're happy with what Substack gives us now, and it's something that as we grow we watch and figure out what the best path is.
Yeah. So like obviously the Ankler was born in this, like at the end of the social media age, it like basically also entering kind of what some pundits are calling this post-social media age. You talk to some media entrepreneurs right now and they say they barely care about social media. Like they have an account on all the major platforms, but they're not nowhere near the emphasis that a publication circa 2014 had. Does the Ankler have a social media strategy at all? Like, is it trying to build a presence on other platforms, or is it just 100% focused on the newsletter, on the email address?
I mean, when I was on my own and the first 4 years or so, Twitter really was the biggest driver of new subscriptions, and that was where I put my energy. I did a lot of fooling around on Facebook to see what would move the needle, and found nothing really led to new subscriptions unless you're going to spend a huge amount of money on ads that were very targeted to, because I have such a tiny universe that I'm going for. So Facebook was never very effective, but Twitter was for a while. Twitter hasn't been a driver of subscriptions as much lately. So I would say we still do it. We still use it. We're on Instagram. We have a Facebook page, but I would say those are less important to the strategy than they would have been a couple years ago.
Have you been doing anything on Substack Notes? I haven't really seen you on there at all.
Yeah, I fool around on there. I put pictures of my dog up and the thoughts here and there. It's still new, so I'm still like, what I write about, it's really specific to what industry. So I'm never quite sure if there's how many people there are who are within my target. Our total target universe is industry professionals, people, but it's probably like 150,000 people on Earth is like the total universe or something. It's of the core audience, and we feel there's bigger audiences outside that, but it's so I'm still experimenting on notes with how much the stuff we write is of interest and how to frame it and all that. So, but I like notes a lot, and I hope they.
Yeah, I mean, I've been using it a lot, and I get incredible engagement. I've pretty much stopped giving original content to Twitter, especially once Elon started blocking and throttling links to Substack. And now, but I get more interaction and engagement on my notes than I ever did on Twitter. And I had a decent sized following on Twitter of like 8,000 people. And the engagement, you could tell these are people who read my newsletter and want to, interact with me more. I noticed you've started to do, I don't think you were doing a podcast last time we spoke. It looks like you have a podcast now. What's your podcast strategy? Is it completely free, or are you locking it for paid subscribers?
So we do a weekly podcast that is totally free, and we have we think of it as something our subscribers will enjoy, and we inform about them, but also a way to reach out to find a larger audience there, and to inform them about what the Ankler is and what we do. We also have other we have other podcasts that live under the Ankler. We have this one called The Martini Shot. This veteran writer does these weekly commentaries about sort of 5 to 10 minutes long about different parts of the business that have been very, very popular, and do some interviews and other things on there. So,
But like, how does it contribute to the business? Is it just helping to strengthen the relationship with the free subscribers to eventually drive paid subscriptions? Or are you selling advertising on it? What's the kind of strategic thinking?
Both of those. We do have ads, and we have sold ads within there, but it's also but I would say hoping to drive people to sign up for the Ankler is probably the larger mission of it, and to reach out to people that aren't already subscribers or aren't already aware of what we do. So
yeah. Okay, we're entering the final 15 minutes. So if anyone wants to ask a question or speak up, now is a really great time. I noticed that you have some kind of partnership with the Bulwark, which is another kind of really popular publication on Substack. I think it started out as mainly kind of right of center, never Trumpers who were running a publication together, but I guess it's expanding into other verticals as well.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was kind of home of the sort of ex people fleeing the Republicans, and starting this thing. They built a really incredible community, largely through their newsletters, but not entirely. They have a mix there of sort of newsletters and then articles that live on their site, sort of traditional articles. And they also have a really incredible podcast community. They produce a bunch of podcasts, and they have a great following. And I've been friendly with them since they launched. And they've been doing this one about Hollywood from this writer that I love named Sonny Bunch, where he does a weekly interview show with someone about the industry. And I think it's been. And so we thought maybe we could co-produce this, and we can help them book guests, and we can jointly sell ads, because they don't necessarily have an ad sales presence within Hollywood or anything. So it's that's just starting off, but we're great to have him under our roof, or half under our roof, and be working with them also. So.
Well, what is your ad sales strategy? Because I know for the longest time it was mainly almost 100% subscriptions. I know you sold some for your consideration type ads around Oscars season. What's the strategy now with advertising?
Yeah, I mean, if you're in the trade realm, those for your consideration ads where people are looking to reach out to entertainment professionals, in particular members of the TV Academy and the Film Academy, and members of the guilds. For the guilds all have their awards, and that's a huge ad category. I think it was like two. I always get numbers wrong, so for me, but I do believe it was like $200 million spent on it last
Wow.
year. So it's a really significant business, and it's funny because we're very focused on growing our readership within entertainment professionals, and people have a heavy interest in that, and that's kind of all the people that these ads are looking to reach. They're not, so it's a really easy overlap. So we have we sell ads to them, and I was taking some of those when I was just on my own, but I didn't have any ability to go out and sell them, or so it was just sort of like every year, two or three of them would sort of just knock on my door, and I'd say, okay, but we're also looking for sort of larger sort of general campaigns, ad campaigns that want to reach this audience, and we have a special audience. So
Yeah, I mean, considering how many hundreds of billions of dollars like the entertainment industry spends, like it seems like there's a lot of B2B vendors and stuff like that would want to reach those executives that work at all these studios and stuff like that. Is that true?
yeah, there is, and we also have a really high open rate, and so I think we have a really loyal audience. So I think we're a good product for ad sales. It's always, with that subscription, the subscription business is always the core of our business, and if you don't have that, you don't have anything. And if you don't have that kind of intense dedication from your readers, then nothing else matters. So it always starts and ends with that. But this is another great way to support a business.
Did you hire like a dedicated ad salesperson, or are you outsourcing that?
We're kind of just doing it ourselves at the moment. So it's we'll grow the team, but Janice has a lot of experience in this world, and we're at the moment managing it ourselves. So.
Mm-hmm. And is it like just like banner ads at the top, or is it like, are you doing like kind of native, like actual editorial copy that's going in the newsletter and stuff like that?
Mostly it's banner ads and PDFs or there's JPEGs that you drop in, and can have larger ads within the within the text. But we'll also do special email blasts of, like, on the weekend we'll send out one that's like, about a particular film, and we talked about, is this a good thing to do? Will this bore our audience? Will this upset them? And I said, well, I was a little wary of it, and of sending special. And I said, okay, we'll try it, and trust the readers to let us know if they don't like it, and if readers push back, then we'll stop. And we didn't get a single note of objection or anyone not wanting it. And they get opened at a very high rate. So we keep doing it, and people don't seem bothered by it.
I noticed that you launched some kind of spin-off newsletter. I think it's called The Optionist, as a separate newsletter, separate Substack account. What was your thinking there? Why do that something as separate from the main Angular brand?
So so this is part of the push and pull, and finding our way, like what should be under the ankler, and what are things that really have their own audience and their own opportunity. So the optionist, which we do, is we have this writer, Annie Lewis, who's knows a lot about Hollywood and a lot about the book world, and is very good at finding these little gems of books just being published, or articles published in obscure places, or podcasts that lend themselves to being adapted to film or TV. And people are desperately looking for those. And it's so he does something that's very specific. It's kind of only of interest to a certain slice of our readership, even. So if our readership is very focused, this is sort of micro focused on a certain number of people. And it's also something that's it takes a lot of work for him to produce this every week and to find all these things, that it's of real sort of premium value. So we launched this as a premium publication, and but we also look for every opportunity to bring things he does that are of interest to our full audience onto the main Ankler feed. So it's finding our way. It's done very well. It has a very loyal and appreciative audience that is small, but is smaller than the Anklers, but also pays a great deal for a much higher rate to subscribe to this.
So do you see a future where you're launching the media company, the umbrella media company is launching new brands, like maybe something that covers the book industry or the creator economy or some other kind of B2B industry type things? Or do you think you're going to stay very focused on kind of Hollywood entertainment?
Yeah, I mean, I think we will expand in both directions, like within Hollywood, but also looking for adjacent industries and joining industries. And again, it's about finding the writers and the talent who can really who both can write it, and if someone's going to launch something on their own, they really need to have a truly entrepreneurial spirit, and like kind of an obsession with their numbers, and obsession of how they're doing, and just sort of restlessness to make it break through. So those are hard and rare people to find, but we're looking to do that, and it's part of the tension that you feel is like the question of like, so how much do you want to do under the banner of one newsletter? Like how much, where's the point? You always want our readers to be looking forward to getting a new issue. So where is the point where it goes from being something that, like they are now, that they're excited about, that they open right away, that you can tell through our open rates, it stays very consistent and high, but where's the point where it becomes a burden? And so one day they'd see they have 27 unopened emails from us in their inbox, and we never want to get anywhere close to that point. So you look for how much do we do under this, and what should be its own thing for its own audience.
Yeah. So in other words, if there's an entertainment reporter out there looking to leave their full-time job and thinking about launching a Substack, they should come to you first and see if you want to launch them as like a sub brand.
If anyone is a smart writer and has a lot of hustle and has an idea for something they like to do, I would always love to talk to you. So call me anytime.
Okay, Richard. Well, we're coming up on the end of the hour. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us, not just the live participants, but the people watching the recorded version later. This has been really insightful.
Thanks so much. Great to see you again, Simon. Great to be here.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.